This is the 5th stage of Haute Route Alps, an individual climbing time trial up Col du Granon. A very tough climb, and a negative split pacing strategy is commonly used and adopted as the best and fastest strategy for a time trial. But if you apply this on a big climb like Granon, you're making a big mistake and you'll blow up before you get to the top. In this video, I'll show and explain why you should be doing something completely different when you're climbing up a big mountain.
Well, that was really tough again.
Stage 5 TT today, individual time trial. We're gonna start here in the village of Briançon, right out of the village, and then just before the Col du Granon, the timing is gonna start. I've done one climbing TT before, which was on Haute Route in the Dolomites 2 years ago. Back then the climb was a fair bit shorter and I pushed 380 watts for 30 minutes on day 5. So right now it's also day 5, but the climb is 50 minutes. I start around 11 o'clock, it's already 28 degrees and we'll be climbing with the sun. So it's just gonna be screaming hot. So the heat factor is actually another factor you should take into account. So today, again, I'm wearing this M3 jersey because it's super light. You can almost look through the jersey. I think it's the lightest jersey I have. And all the other jerseys I took were kind of dark in color, so I want to be light.
Currently, I'm in the 7th place of the GC after losing sometime yesterday, and I got further away from my main goal of reaching the top 5 this year. In this stage, 100% of the race was uphill and with no way for me to compensate or attack on any flat or technical section. It would definitely be a stage dominated by the skinny climbing types. So the challenge not to lose even more time was even bigger. I needed a perfect performance on this race or I would drop further in the GC. And that's where I had to apply a very precise pacing strategy. My pacing will be different than what you expect, and I will explain why and what factors play into this.
Rolling out to the start of the TT. My call out time is about 10 minutes from now. I just stayed in my hotel room, try to get a cold shower and stuff, not to overheat because it's already 30 degrees. I'm actually a bit nervous, but that's good.
In the Haute Route time trials, you always start off this ramp, just like the real pros during a time trial. However, the timing actually doesn't start until you are out of the village or out of the neutral zone, which made for a perfect warm-up. Here I'm still in the neutral, so let's explain what is coming up and how I'm going to approach this. I have limited experience, but with my pacing plan, my pacing strategy that I'm going to explain right now, I got to a very good performance. We're riding up Col du Granon, which is 11.4 kilometers at a 9.1% average gradient, so super steep. It starts at 1300 meters and then it finishes at 2400 meters. I estimated the climb to be about 45 to 50 minutes, and since this is below an hour, I should be able to push more than my FTP, right? Well, in this case, that's actually not true at all, and let me explain. This is where the actual time trial starts. On the screen you'll see my power, the distance to go at the top, and the elevation that I'm riding on the left. The elevation is a very big factor in this whole story that I'm going to explain. Right now I'm rolling through the start gate and I'm starting to push hard, straight from the beginning. 11 kilometers, full gas. Let's go. So I start hard, and one thing with a time trial or a 20-minute power test, whatever, it usually feels easy in the beginning. This is normal. We're aiming to get the highest average power as steady as possible and then be completely empty at the finish line. That's when you'll be in generally the fastest. But because it feels easy, in the beginning it's very tempting to go too hard. So you see me pushing 440, 450 watts because it just feels easy. I'm excited, adrenaline is pumping through my veins, and I have to tone myself down. It's really important to stick to your target or you're gonna blow up in the first few minutes. My power is coming from the Yasioma Duo power meters. I've been using them for a few years, including my time trial back in the Dolomites 2 years ago. So I can really compare these data numbers, and it's very reliable because I've been training with them for a couple of years. So all these data, all these numbers are comparable to each other. Great about the Asayomas is they last very long. I didn't have to charge them at all during the Haute Route. And they have an automatic temperature compensation, meaning if you have a very hot day like this, the power meter will automatically compensate for that temperature, where other power meters you would have to recalibrate them when it's really hot or really cold. This one does it even during a ride. Especially in the Alps, the temperature can vary a lot from the top to the bottom of the climb, so you'll keep a very accurate reading. Also, I installed a fresh pair of pedal bodies just before this race, so I was sure that I would have proper equipment. Super easy swap, and you'll keep the same power meter, you're just swapping the pedal bodies. So now we're gonna talk about the actual pacing. Time trials usually are paced in a negative split, where you start slightly below your average power and then increase along the way. This will keep you fresher during the effort, and it's just shown to get the best results. So normally in a 45-minute TT, I would guess I can push about 100 to 105% of my FTP, which will be about 395 to 420 watts based on my 395 watt FTP, which is an assumption on itself. At 81 kilos, that's 4.9 watt per kilo. So on a big climb like this, with a lot of elevation gain, we'll have a change in air pressure. So your FTP at the bottom will not be the same as your FTP at the top. Especially for higher elevation climbs like Granon, which already start at 1300 meters, you really have to compensate that. I searched the web on the effect of the elevation on available aerobic power, and I found this conversion table. It's based on 2 different studies. It gives different percentages of FTP based on a given altitude, depending whether you're acclimatized or not. Well, usually acclimatization only happens after 2 weeks, and since I was only there for a few days, I'm using the non-acclimatized figures. And it's simple. At 2400 meters or 8000 feet, my FTP is only 84% of my sea level FTP. So I have to bring my numbers down in order to make it realistic and achievable. If I wouldn't do that, I would definitely blow up before I would get to the top. So at the base of the climb, my FTP would already be reduced to about 375. And at the top, it would theoretically drop all the way down to 340 watts. That's a very noticeable difference from 400, right? So I'm still actually using a negative split pacing. However, I had to recalculate these numbers to the elevation I was riding on. There's another micro pacing strategy that I have applied on this climb. Even though the climb was very steady at 9% gradient, there's always more steep parts like this right now, and then it would get a little more shallow. In general, you want to push the most on the steepest part of the climb. So when there's a ramp going from 9 to 10 or 11%, you actually want to increase your power a little bit to overcome that steepest part as quickly as you can. Then when it levels out and it gets flatter, you want to push a little bit less. Because your speed increases, you get more aerodynamic drag and you get more waste of energy at high speed. So always push harder when you go slower. That's a general rule. In the meantime, I've got a little bit more than 5 kilometers to go. The current elevation is 1850 meters, which was also the average elevation of this climb, and my relative FTP at this elevation should be around 350. My VAM was 1240 average over the whole climb. I pushed 4.5 watts per kilo at about 365 watts. So 365 watts is well below my FTP, but if we recalculate that to the elevation, it's actually 104% of my relative FTP. So in the first 5 minutes, I pushed 375, which is 100% of relative FEP. Then from 5 to 20 minutes, I pushed 380 watts, which is 101% of my relative FTP. Then 20 to 30 minutes, I pushed 360 watts, also 101%. And then the last 15 minutes, I pushed 355 watts average, which is 105% of my relative FTP at 2100 meters. So in the end, I actually pushed a perfect negative split where I did 100% in the beginning and 105% at the end, completely empty at the top. It's kind of a theoretical story, and I hope you guys can still follow what I'm saying. The heat was extreme. You can see it on the screen, 33 degrees Celsius on this climb in the sun, going slow up against the hill, so not that much of wind, and it was very, very tough. Getting closer to the rider in front of me, this is Janine. She's the second in the ladies GC. She also started in front of me. Right in the beginning of the time trial, I was already overtaking Samantha. She was the leader in the women's GC. And later, on top of the climb, I'm overtaking a few men as well. And if one thing is very motivating during a time trial, is when you're overtaking the riders in front of you. I was peeking backwards because Rod was starting behind me, and I was, every once in a while I was looking back like, is he still there? Because until now, on every race, he was performing better than me on the climbs. I was dropping out of his wheel multiple times on the climbs and then gaining it back on the descent or on the flatter section. So when the 100% of the race is timed and this guy is way lighter than me, faster in general up a hill, I was afraid that he was gonna get more time on me today. That's actually what I was expecting from today. So I was, looking back to see if he was still there, and this gave me a double motivation to go full gas, because on one side I'm overtaking the riders that started ahead of me, and then on the other side I'm trying to stay in front of the guy behind me. So I'm motivated from both sides to go just absolutely full gas everything I have. So here's another tip for pacing. If you're on your climb, make sure you have the correct data on your head unit. So I use time, distance, elevation, and VAM. VAM is vertical ascending meters. It will tell you how many meters you're climbing per hour. So it would be, for me, at about my FTP, it's around 1200 meters per hour. So at this moment, I'm at 2100 meters. I know the top of the climb is around 2300. So that's another 200 meters vertically to climb. So that's a sixth of an hour. So I know I've got 10 minutes left. Another way to do it is on a steady climb by speed. So if I am doing right now 10 or 15 kilometers an hour, I know how many minutes per kilometer I need to ride. So 15 kilometers an hour means 4 minutes per kilometer. So if you know how far you need to go, which is usually signposted on these climbs, or you know how far the climb is and you've made a mental note where you started, then by the distance you can also recalculate how many minutes of suffering you have left till the top. It's a metric I use all the time to keep calculating. It kind of keeps my head off the pain in my legs as well, but it also gets me a good idea of how much time I've got left. Right now I'm approaching Mattia, my homeboy. He's in this blue skin suit. He started in front of me because he's below me in the GC, and I started to get close to him. We're also approaching the 1 kilometer to go signs that are these blue signs. And Mattia was looking back. I got in his wheel and he started pulling quite hard, giving me this little bit of extra draft, which was awesome. Right now it's flattening out. You can see it's getting flat here, so we're pushing really hard. Speed ramps up, and on contrary to what I said before about not pushing too hard on the flat, At this point, we're approaching the end of the time trial, so you push out everything you have left. It was a short pull from Mattia. Great work, dude. And right now, this is Ruben Granon, another Dutch racer that I also overtook, getting close to the finish. We've got 700 meters to go. This is really when your legs are screaming for mercy. It is very painful. My pacing strategy right now is just full gas, everything I've got left. And if I look at my average power in the last few minutes, it was around 360 watts, which is well above my FTP on this elevation, so that was pretty good pacing.
Come on, Jasper!
250 meters to go right now. The difficult thing of a time trial is that you're fighting against the time, against you. It's just you and your bike, there's no one else. It's not like you have your competitor right there and you know how fast he is, so you know how hard you have to push to win, or to chase somebody down, or to stay ahead of somebody. It's just you. There's no one else that can help you. You have to push everything you got. Right now it's 100 meters around this corner. At Haute Route, it's always awesome that there's other guys cheering for you. And here we are approaching the finish line. I'm pushing all I have left, 420 watts. So I still had a little bit left, which is well above my FTP at this elevation. 500 watts coming through the finish line. And that's it. Stage 5 is in the books.
Oh shit, oh, that was really tough again.
1 minute 37 seconds later.
I think my my pacing was pretty good. Nothing left at the top. I think Rod wasn't able to keep up. He's not finished yet. So I've got at least a minute and a half on him.
So my goal today was to control the damage and not lose more time in the GC. However, to my surprise, my all-out effort and almost perfect pacing strategy worked. And it actually got me a very fast time of 46 minutes and 20 seconds, which led to the 6th time of the day, which I was very happy with. Before we go to the end result, let me know what you think of this pacing strategy and if you're gonna try it yourself. My time was so fast that I managed to make up 2 minutes and 47 seconds on Rod, who was ahead of me in the GC, now bumping me up to the 6th place overall with only 5 seconds in between the two of us. Tomorrow will be a massive stage with the Izoard and the Col d'Agnel all the way up to 2,760 meters. Will I struggle again? And will I crack just like what we've seen on the Galibier? Can I defend my 6th spot in the GC? Stay tuned for tomorrow. See ya!
And at some point I was like, okay, you take a pull. And I look back and he wasn't there.